Hello and welcome to a new episode of Real Spooky Stories, the place where I tell your real spooky stories. If you'd like to share your story, no matter how trivial or silly or not believable you may think it is, please email jade@cryptocoven.co.uk because I just love hearing them. Or you can click below any of the social media platforms, DM me, or anything, just send me them anyway. So today's episode is about Ouija boards and people's stories about Ouija boards. So these are taken from Reddit again. I think I've got about 5 stories this week, and I will link them all below if you want to read them or read the comments or anything like that on them. But other than that, let's go into the first story. So the first one is taken from the subreddit True Scary Stories, and it is titled Why I Don't Play with Ouija Boards Anymore. There'll be 2 stories here. The first one super creepy and the second one more sad / more of an explanation as to why I no longer participate. I want to preface this all by saying I grew up seeing ghosts, so the whole topic of spirits wasn't new to me. However, I was so scared by them that around the time I was around 7 or 8, when the energetic system started to be solely individualised, I trained my brain to not see them anymore. I never talked about it with friends as my family never believed me, so I assumed they wouldn't either. A little edit: due to the attention I've received on this post, I decided to change the name of the person I mentioned in the latter story. I originally posted their real name and I decided that possibly wasn't a good idea because people could look up who they were. The first story takes us back to the noughties. I was a little girl celebrating my friend's birthday. She always had a Halloween party to celebrate because that's when her birthday happened to be. She always talked about how her basement felt weird and she didn't like staying down there alone. Well, having 10 or so 10-year-old girls sleep over on Halloween night isn't exactly bedroom material, so her mum and grandma set us up in the basement. There, we played those weird games like light as a feather, stiff as a board and stuff. For the fact, I was the only one that successfully levitated. I remember opening my eyes and I was damn near the ceiling. It was spooky. When some of us started to get tired, we brought out the Ouija board. A few of our friends were spooked, so they didn't want to participate. We asked innocent questions like kids usually do. Who is the birthday girl going to marry? How old are we going to be when we have kids? Stuff like that. I remember I asked a question about myself and it replied dead, which was weird. Some of the girls got spooked even more by that. Then a girl screamed and said she saw something behind me in the mirror. We stopped after that. For a few hours, 3 of us, including me and the birthday girl, couldn't sleep. We weren't sure if the board was real or not, so we decided we'd try one more time while everyone else was asleep, thinking that since they didn't want to play, it'd be better that way. We were close to 3 a.m. What we heard was the witching hour. Remember here that we are about 10 or 11 years old, dumb, and have no idea what we were doing or who we were talking to. We asked the board if it could do something for us. We said at 3:15 a.m. to have the girl who saw something in the mirror wake up and say something to us. It was over 15 years ago, so I don't remember what we asked for this girl to say. All I know is we asked for her to look in the mirror and say it. 3:15 a.m. was about 20 minutes or so from when we asked the question. I remember us saying goodbye to the board and putting it away. The 3 of us were talking about how impossible our ask was when 3:15 a.m. hit. We knew it hit 3:15 a.m. because her basement had a big grandfather clock that didn't ring anymore, but the clock function still worked. We were waiting and waiting, and right before the time changed to 3:16, it happened. This girl shot straight up out of her blankets and looked straight in the mirror with her eyes closed. She whispered what we asked her to say, then dropped to her pillow like nothing ever happened. We all just looked at each other, frozen. No other girl that was sleeping stirred. None of them moved, not 1 centimetre. We were so freaked out that we didn't sleep until the sun came up. And in October and in the Midwest, that's pretty late. We got 3 hours of sleep tops that night. This was my first ever Ouija board experience, and that changed the way I view spirits forever. I still think about it and feel guilty that I basically asked for one of my friends to be possessed. Needless to say, don't ever do that. Our second story comes in nearly a decade after the first. I was a senior in high school and one of my cheermates invited the whole team over to celebrate her birthday. I didn't know it, but she had a Ouija board. She brought it out and I said, nope, not a good idea. I guess her grandma had just died and she was really torn up about it. I was very adamant that this wasn't a good idea and that we don't know if that what we're talking to would be her grandma or not. She promised me she'd just try it twice and then she put it away. By this time, I knew a lot more than I did back during my first experience. I told her that she must say goodbye each time the girls rotated, and I had them put salt around the board to keep whatever they were talking to inside the board, and so no one would or could get possessed. They tried it at least 4 times with different girls every time, and the planchette didn't move even once. They all laughed at me for how scared I acted earlier, saying that the board is stupid and doesn't actually work. I got kind of annoyed because some of them knew about my experience. I had shared it to the few who were already hesitant about the board when it was brought out. I said, "You know what, I'll do it, and I'll prove to everyone here that these boards are real." It was me, the birthday girl, who was a class below me, and 2 other girls from my class who only joined the team for our senior year. We put our fingers on the planchette and did the 3 circles to begin. I asked who we were talking to, and the planchette moved for the first time that night. The 2 girls in my class were huge skeptics. They said, of course it would move when I said, I'll prove it's real. They accused me of moving it, but this information that came out was the information I never knew until they connected the dots for me. The ball first goes to the letter J, then to the letter R. We were all confused because JR isn't a name or a name of anyone we knew. Or so we thought. When we asked why they were here, and the board spelled friend, we asked again, who is this, and the board spelled JR. We then asked, what does J stand for, and the board spelled out JONAT, and one of the girls from my class screamed, no way. We all looked at her in confusion. She asked, is this Jonathan Ramon? The planchette immediately moved to yes. The 2 girls sat so quietly and we just waited. The birthday girl asked who JR was, and the girls started to explain. JR was a guy who was in the class above me. I knew of him, but nothing about him personally. I had been cheering at our school all 4 years, so I knew him more from the football team. That was about all I knew of him. He had passed our sophomore year, his junior year, due to his car's exhaust. He didn't want to wake his parents after driving home from the party in the middle of winter, so he slept in the car with the car on in the garage. His parents found him the next morning. I remember it totally ripped apart his class. I remember his friends not showing up to school for at least 2 weeks out of grief, and we had a big celebration on the football field in the spring. Back to the Ouija board situation, the 2 girls in my class were panicked. They looked at me weird and said, well, it must be him coming through. They said, no, that's impossible because the board doesn't work and that I'm making all this up and moving the planchette. They said I was a horrible person for impersonating JR, and I said I wasn't because I truly wasn't. I said, let's keep going and see what comes up. I knew they were friends of his and could validate the information that comes through. They reluctantly agreed. I feverishly asked a few more questions. They asked me what his football number was. The planchette moved to 2 numbers, and the 2 girls were in shock. I looked at them questioningly because, again, I didn't know this about him. It had been 2 years since he passed, and I had no idea what his number was. I couldn't even remember which number the assigned player I had a few months before had. Then they asked what colour car he had. The board answered red, which was true. I at least remember the picture they had for his celebration was him in his red car because he loved the car. They then asked who was his best friend. I definitely had zero idea who that would be. Again, we had similar friends. We were at the same places in the same time occasionally, but I never once spoke to this guy, and our mutuals didn't really talk to me about him because we didn't really have anything in common other than friends and the football/cheerleader type of association. The board spelled out his best friend's name. The guy was the only guy in our school with that first name, but we asked for the last name just to see if it would spell it correctly, and it did. The girls didn't even say goodbye. They flung the board at me. They called me a liar, saying I made all of this up. They were sobbing and screaming at me. It made me feel so uncomfortable. I was nothing but the turner, the instrument which opened the veil for them, and they thought I was an awful person. The whole team fell silent, and I left due to the discomfort. Even though I had been captain of our team and had cheered with a majority of those girls for at least 3 years, majority of them didn't talk to me, even at practice, for at least 2 weeks. So many of them thought I was either crazy or disgusting. Only a few of them understood that I wouldn't have known that based on who I was friends with at the school and who I actually hung out with. JR and I never truly crossed paths for conversation until that night. If it was actually him, that is. I think it was, but I do know that spirits can pretend to be someone and read our thoughts/memories with them. I don't use Ouija boards anymore because you never know who you're going to get or who you're going to piss off, even if it works. Now I'm a practicing energy reader and medium, so all this type of stuff in my life has taught me about how to further connect in a safe way behind the veil. That's quite spooky, and yeah, it was kind of sad as well, but how obviously you've like opened up your energy more now and stuff, but it's scary to think that you're like this veil. And I heard a lot of people say they don't use Ouija boards, or you know what, I heard a lot of people be like, I don't believe in the paranormal, I don't really believe in ghosts, I don't believe in this, I don't believe in that. And then as soon as you mention a Ouija board, they get all, no, I'm not doing a Ouija board. Okay, why then, if you don't believe in it? There's just something spooky about them. I used to have a Ouija board on my bedroom wall. I've still got the Ouija board, but I've never used it. And I will not use it in my house. I have used one when we done a overnight ghost hunt thing, like in the middle of the night, and the team that you were with, they like open it up properly and tell you what to do and tell you what to do to close it properly and everything like that. So that was safe, but yeah, they are a bit of a scary thing to dabble in, especially ones that people make themselves. Okay, let's go on to story number 2, and this one is from the subreddit Paranormal Encounters, and it is called Homemade Ouija Board. How convenient is that after I've just said that? Okay, so I know the controversy and the skepticism and dangers of Ouija boards. Trust me, my grandmother, who is very spiritual, always warned me about them, but this experience was incredible and definitely unbelievable if you weren't there. I have a friend who lived on a ranch and stayed in this little old house, and him and his family were always into ghosts and stuff, and so am I, but I wouldn't touch or go near the Ouija boards. One time they brought out this store-bought one and they decided to try and spook me with it, but nothing happened besides them playing a couple of tricks and then us just being silly. Not sure who had the idea to make one out of paper and cardboard, but I don't know what happened there, if it was because we made it together or something about us putting our energy into it. Damn that thing. So back to the ranch house, I went over there one day and they told me how they've been talking to something or someone, and I didn't believe it, so they showed me. And yeah, it was moving and answered questions directly, and even looked as if the planchette was moving a little too quick for their hands to stay on. That part got me. I'm not going to go into detail on that character they were talking to because it felt dark and not okay, and that was confirmed later when I decided to try and play with the board. I come back to hang out another day with my friends, and his little sisters are all happy to show me that they have been talking to something or someone friendly. I decided to try, so we asked some questions and the planchette moves, sort of like a magnet is pulling or something is pulling down, and it's the most crazy feeling. I think you'd only know if you messed with one. I'm honestly in shock at this point because I never thought this could happen. I had no doubt it was real because the thing was homemade, a thin little cardboard thing. We go on and ask some questions and we get that there is 2 little boys. I think we ask some more questions and get to the point where we end up finding some toy cars and end up putting them on the board. And when I tell you this was the selling point where I 100% believed in all this, was when the planchette starts moving on the board and starts pushing the cars. And once again, it moves too fast for our hands to stay on. And I remember one point, my hand was the only one on and it was moving, but slowly. And that freaked me out a bit because up until then, I had doubts and thought someone else was moving it. There's a lot more to this story, but I just had to get this out there and hopefully someone believes me. And if one day I could go back and actually get proof. But I think the best experiences always happen when you're not trying to catch it. People are commenting saying, you're in for an uncomfortable ride, my friend. I do not envy you. And they've commented saying, I haven't had anything weird happen since. Just the normal stuff. I don't know what that means. Just the normal stuff. Does that mean non-paranormal stuff, or does that mean nothing? Because normal stuff surely isn't paranormal. But yeah, this is literally what I've just said. When people say, I don't go near a Ouija board, I don't want to go near a Ouija board and things like that. So just be careful, kids, if you're playing with the Ouija boards. This is story number 3, and this is from the subreddit True Scary Stories, and it is titled, I'm Never Using a Ouija Board Again. So if you've read some of my Reddit stories, you know that I'm a person who experienced a lot of spooky shit in my childhood. Narrated reading this for YouTube can skip this and get to the story. I know they've said that, but I just wanted to read it anyway. And none of that really scares me as time goes on because I like getting scared. If you also like getting scared to the point you dookie yourself, what does that mean? Must mean like poo yourself? Not really. Leave a comment. What? But scary stuff that's happened to me is different. Now, since I was a fan of this, I did stuff like trying to summon spirits until it worked. Here's my story. I was your average go-to horror fan guy. I'd watch YouTube videos about summoning spirits, ghost sightings, anything that would make a toddler cry for 20 years out of fear. This happened about 6 years ago, in late 2017. I was scrolling through YouTube and found something called a Ouija board, which you could experience and talk to spirits. I thought it wouldn't work, so I decided to try it with friends. I ordered one online and showed it to my friends. That would never work. I'm not a 12-year-old. I'll give it a shot though. Ain't nothing gonna happen. Marcus, you're crazy, but I guess we can try it. Of course, bro, seems cool. So when I arrived, I remembered you had to stay up until exactly 3 a.m. for it to work. So we made coffee in between hours to stay awake. When it was 3:10, we set it up. We lit candles and shut off every light in the house. We put our hands on the hands. I decided to go first. We circled the hand around the board and I asked, "Is there anyone there?" We stopped and it moved. The hand went to yes. "Dude, what the hell?" Chase said. "I'll go next." Jackson said, "We moved the hand around the board. If you are there, give us a sign." We then heard footsteps upstairs. "Okay, what the hell was that?" My friend Lamar said. We then heard the footsteps going down the stairs. We all freaked out and in unison ran out the door and drove away. 2 figures were at my front door, just standing there, not moving an inch. I can't prove it, but I swear they were looking directly at us. We arrived at the nearby motel and slept there. We went back the next day, expecting something waiting for us, and only found a trashed house. Furniture flipped, trash everywhere, fallen photos and broken stuff. After that, I salvaged what I could and found another house. I tested it there myself and nothing happened there. No spirits inhabited where I lived, and thank God it didn't follow me. I moved from that state to a different one, far from there, and nothing haunts me to this day. I look back at this now and think, was it just our tired minds imagining something? But then how was my house trashed when no one was there? I don't know, but from this experience, I encourage you to never use a Ouija board. This is weird, and I don't understand. Like, I was just thinking the same thing. Someone's commented, "Did you leave the house with the candles on? Did you lock the door? How did you just go to another house?" Like, when he was like, "Oh, we went to the motel," I was thinking you were just in like someone's house. Like that. And then the OP's commented, "Who takes the time to blow out their candles when a demon who takes the time to blow out the candles when a demon is coming downstairs? Also, I did close the door which locks automatically and I had a key. The neighbourhood barely has crime. It's because people are saying, do you think it could have been a break-in?" And also, the other thing, what I was just thinking, late 17, I heard something called a Ouija board. Have you never heard of Ouija board before 2017? Like, surely, especially if you're into horror and stuff, I'm sure you must have heard of Ouija board before 2017. But yeah, that was a scary experience. So let's go on to the 4th story from today, and this is from the subreddit Paranormal Encounters, and it is titled Paranormal Ouija Encounter. Story 1, Haunted Garage. I moved in with my sister and her ex in a little renovated garage unit made into a living room / kitchen area, a 1-bed and bath. In Berea, Kentucky. Sorry if I've said that wrong. She told me it was haunted because she would hear footsteps and noises coming from the living room when no one was home but her. From the get-go, the place felt off. Everyone always got the heavy feeling of being watched, everywhere else but the bedroom, including the bathroom. One day I told Henry that we didn't like it when he stared at us, especially in the shower, and not to be a perv. They only used the bedroom and the facilities when necessary, so there was no furniture in the living room. So when the neighbour gave me a couple of wooden chairs, I brought them over to the house. My sister didn't want them there, but I still just sat them against the wall and went about my day. Well, the next time I went into the living room, one of the chairs had been moved to the middle of the floor underneath the ceiling fan. I asked if anyone moved it and she mouthed off, "I don't even want them there, so why would I fool with them?" So I just placed them back against the wall, and then the next time I went in there, it had happened again. We had heard the rumours about a man hanging himself in there, and I suppose that just about sums it up. Also, one night my sister had her friend Matilda over and we were all sitting on the bed in a triangle, her friend and I at the foot of the bed. We were just talking when I saw a quarter-sized black orb float in from front of the wall, up over the top of the blinds, and then disappear. The blinds were closed and it was night time, so it wasn't a headlight or anything. I stopped talking and said I just saw something, and Matilda said she did too and elaborated exactly what I saw. We also always had bad dreams there. Story 2, The Soaring Pan. I was spending the night with my friend Raspberry at her brother Michael's house. The other brother, Spalding, her boyfriend Barney, and 2 cats were also there. It was around 11 p.m. when she broke out her glow-in-the-dark Ouija board with a light-up planchette, and we all head upstairs to the closet, including the cats. Why have we gone to the closet? Leaving no one or nothing to debunk our experience. We were all very serious about playing it and wouldn't have goofed off. So we sit down, light a few candles, and begin asking if there's anyone there who would like to speak to us. We get a yes and all look at each other. We play on asking random questions, and I remember the last question being, "Are you in the house?" "No," it reads. Then immediately after that, we hear a bang downstairs. We do a half-assed goodbye, pushing at ourselves, and burst out of the closet and down the stairs to find that the pan we had used to make the biscuits earlier and obviously left on top of the stove had been completely thrown across the room into the living room. Safe to say, our adrenaline was pumping for a while that night. It was incredible. Story 3, non-human. Later that night, it was just Michael and I playing another round on the Ouija board, and we asked the spirit, "Are you human?" It said no. And then there's scratching on the closet door, then banging and scratching as if something was trying to get in. Like I said, we were all very serious about it and wouldn't have messed around. Besides, someone always fesses up to it at some point when they do play a prank like that. No one ever did. We left the closet to find rather deep claw marks on it, and that was the last time we played. This is weird. Also, why are we in the closet? I don't know why they went in the closet. Like, what's... And then imagine being in the closet, something's trying to get in. Like, that, I feel like that might be scarier than if you were in the closet and something was banging from inside the closet. Because at least it's in the closet and you've got everywhere else to go. But if you're in the closet and something gets in, there's nowhere to go. Sorry to make that spooky, but that was almost a year ago, that one now. But yeah, really weird. And I don't understand why you said it was just you and Michael playing another round on the Ouija board and then scratch on the door. So is everyone else gone home at this point? Or because if they hadn't, then it could have just been... I mean, obviously they wouldn't have done the scratch on the door. And that's the fact that the scratch marks are actually there is scary as well. But if they hadn't gone home, it could have just been them, like, making noise or something. I don't know. It is scary though. I don't like it. Okay, and let's go on to the 5th and final story. This one is from the subreddit Ghost Stories and is titled Ouija Boards in Haunted Childhood Home. At the end of May 1987, while my parents were on vacation, I was taking care of the haunted house I had lived in from 1979 till 1985. By this time, the poltergeist activity had decreased to almost nothing, but I was still scared to be in the house alone, especially at night. I called a friend of mine and asked him if he would mind staying there with me when he could, while my parents were gone. I told him quite a few stories about the activity in the house and barn in the past, so I used the possibility of a paranormal encounter to lure him into staying. He, fortunately for him, had never experienced anything he would consider paranormal before, but was still interested and not sceptical, so he agreed to stay that night. While I was waiting for him to arrive, my brother called to see if I was going to be staying there that night so he could hang out with his friends. I confirmed that I was and also told him I was having my friend over to possibly have his first paranormal experience. My brother thought that was a good idea, so he decided to mention that to his friends and see if they wanted to join in for an experience of their own. One of his friends had a Ouija board and thought that was a great place to try it out, so they agreed. My brother arrived with his 2 friends first and we walked around outside telling his friends about the experiences we had in there and the barn. One of his friends was a skeptic, so he wasn't believing anything me and my brother was talking about. The other was like my friend. He hadn't experienced anything in his life, but he still had an open mind. While we were talking, my friend finally arrived, so I went to his car to greet him. He had his girlfriend with him, so I asked if he was still planning on staying the night. He said yes, as long as his girlfriend could stay as well. I didn't mind, as long as she was aware of my reason for having him stay. I told her that strange things may happen that might be scary to someone who has never experienced those things before. She was also a skeptic, so she agreed to stay, saying nothing was going to happen anyway. While my brother and his friend were still outside, I took my friend and his girlfriend upstairs to show him where they could sleep. After showing them, I started telling stories about the house to prepare them for what could possibly happen during the night. The only thing I was expecting would happen was the attic door would shake and make noise like it had done almost every night when I was living there. We went into the attic so I could show them what was in there while still talking about past experiences in the house and barn. There was a stack of old encyclopedias on the floor that was in disarray with one on the floor. I picked the one up from the floor and placed it on top of the stack and then straightened up the stack while finished my stories of experiences. Afterwards, I went back downstairs to see what my brother was doing. My friend stayed upstairs with his girlfriend so they could be alone. When I got downstairs, I saw that they had already set up the Ouija board on the table and even a few candles on the table around it. The table was in the dining room at the bottom of the stairs. I closed the stairway door and sat down in the empty chair in front of me, facing away from the door. My brother and his 2 friends were already sitting in the other chairs. We lit the candles, put our fingers on the planchette and began asking questions. The planchette was moving with all our hands on it, answering our questions. I wasn't moving it, but I did think someone in our group was. I didn't believe Ouija boards were anything more than a novelty. While playing with the board, we heard someone walking on the stairs, which caused all four of us to look at the stairway door. I didn't think anything of it, since my friend and his girlfriend were still upstairs. I just figured they were coming down, but after a little time, he hadn't opened the door. So I opened the door and saw that he wasn't there. I then went up and asked him if he had gone down the stairs, and he told me that him and his girlfriend hadn't moved from the couch they were sitting on. He told me that they thought one of us was coming upstairs because they heard it also. 6 people heard someone walking on the stairs when there was no one on the stairs. My brother's sceptical friend was getting really spooked after that. We had to convince him not to leave. His other friend was intrigued, like it was the coolest thing he's experienced up to that point. My brother and I were used to that sort of thing, so it didn't faze us at all. After convincing his friend to stay, we went back to playing with the Ouija board. It was answering questions again, and I still thought somebody was moving the planchette. Then the intrigued friend asked whatever it was answering the questions to put out one of the candles. Within 5 seconds, one of the candles just burned out. There was no moving air in the room, plus all the other candles were still burning without any motion indicating moving air. The spooked sceptical friend screamed and started running for the door, still screaming. The other friend followed him and my brother after that. I shouldn't have been, but I was laughing at the guy's reaction. Even though it was spooky, I've never expected a big guy like him to scream like that. I went outside, found my brother's friends getting in the car to leave. I said we can't stop without saying goodbye on the Ouija board just in case the superstition is true. My brother's friends were not willing to go back in the house though, so my brother and I went in and said the goodbye. They left right after that without the Ouija board. I went back inside and blew out the remaining candles. Then I went upstairs to tell my friend and his girlfriend what just happened, since I knew they had to have heard the screaming. We sat upstairs talking until night time. Nothing happened until after midnight when the attic door began moving. Like I mentioned before, this was a usual occurrence in that house, so I was used to it. My friend's girlfriend was getting really scared by this though. She didn't believe things like this could happen, and here it was happening. It took a bit of convincing to get her to stay, but she did at that point. The attic door was shaking and making noise the whole time. After a bit of time, there was a loud noise that came from the inside the attic, sounded like something being dragged across the floor. Then the sound of knocking from within. Once again, we had to talk his girlfriend into not leaving, even while the door rattling and the knocking was still going on. After a few minutes, there was a loud thud that sounded like someone had dropped a book flat onto the wooden floor. That was it for his girlfriend. There was no talking her into staying now. She ran downstairs with us right behind her. She told my friend she would be back to pick him up in the morning, and she left. We went back inside and slept downstairs. When we got up, I just had to look in the attic to see where that loud noise came from. When I looked, the first thing I noticed with the stack of encyclopedias was no longer straightened up, and the one I picked up was right back on the floor. I can't say for sure if any of this was brought on by the Ouija board, but that was more occurrences in one day, witnessed by more people than there had ever been in the house before. People commenting, it's pretty amazing so much happened, and in spite of you being used to it, I would not be able to stay the night. You shouldn't use a Ouija board in your own room, in your own house. You never know what you might end up calling. And the OP has replied, I still have a hard time seeing the Ouija board as anything more than a novelty. That day did make me wonder though. It took a few years of being terrified all the time before I finally realised that whatever it was scaring us was completely harmless. At that time, I just thought poltergeist activity was kind of cool. Except when I was alone, I was still terrified to be alone in there. Yeah, even if nothing like physically happens to you or you don't see anything, it's just strange. Like, it's just... And the fact that like 6 people have saw it. Oh, someone's commented, any history on the house, any feeling if it was just destructive or aggressive? And the OP has replied, that's a good question. There was no history I could find concerning the house, so I have no explanation for the events in there. I did find a newspaper article from 1926 about the farmer that lived there, injuring his ankle in the field behind the house and only making it to the barn before he bled to death. I always figured that explained the barn. The entity wasn't harmless like the one in the house though. Strange. But yeah, it was just, I don't know. Maybe it's like the farmer who got injured, and like it's like what's it called, a residual haunting, where he's just going about his day in his house and he's just like moving the pans. I mean, I don't think he probably threw the pan across the room in his day, but maybe he's just like living his life and like something about the lot. I don't know why the attic shakes. Like, I don't like that. And the encyclopedia's moving. As soon as you were like, oh, I moved the encyclopedias, stacked them up. I was like, this is gonna come back up later. But yeah, it's just weird. And I said before, I would never do a Ouija board in my house or like in anyone's house, I don't think. And I still feel like that. And as I've said before, even it's just a weird thing, isn't it? Like, what the hell even is a Ouija board? Like, it's literally a piece of wood or a piece of something with loads of letters on, and you can just contact the dead. How does this piece of thing make you be able to contact the dead? You know what I mean? It just seems too easy, and that's spooky. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and I'll see you next week on Sunday at 12 p.m. for a new episode. If you want to share your stories, please contact jade@cryptocoven.uk. Follow me on any social media platforms below. Submit your story on the Reddit below or anything. Just DM me on anything. Or anyway, I hope you enjoyed this week's stories about Ouija boards. If there's any specific topics you want me to cover or you're like particularly interested in and you'd like to hear real stories about them, let me know. Contact me on any social media platforms below or email me on jade@cryptocoven. Same way if you contact me about your own real spooky stories, if you want them shared as well. So yeah, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week on Sunday at 12 p.m. Goodbye, and don't use a Ouija board in your house. Bye.